Here's a paragraph written by Jerzy himself. Exercising for entertainment and eating for pleasure are easy choices that don't make you better over time. Easy choices are familiar and comforting, but there's no growth or improvement. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to start enjoying your life. You can do that much earlier and start living a life that you love and that's true to you. Welcome to Freedom Before FI. Using FIRE and life design techniques, we help you create freedom on your way to FI instead of waiting until you're retired to do the things that light you up. I'm your host Greg, a FIRE movement and life design enthusiast. If you're itching to get freedom now, then let's do this. Hello there, welcome back to another episode of Freedom Before FI, and I'm really happy that you're joining us today. So here in the Philippines, the last few weeks have been nice and cool. We've had a few storms pass by, so it's been rainy and overcast. But when you live in the tropics, sometimes it's good to have some good old UK weather every now and then just to cool you off. So if you listened to the last episode, I left you with one of my favourite quotes about how to live your life. That quote was, "Hard choices, easy life. Easy choices, hard life." And it's by a chap called Jerzy Gregorek from Poland. He's probably in his late 60s now and he lives in the US. He went on to be a 4-time World Weightlifting Champion, also holding one world record. And he also wrote the book, The Happy Body. So he learned from his weightlifting coach that progress can only happen on the edge, in his words, when it's a bit difficult, but not like super difficult. If you consume any Tim Ferriss stuff, you might have already heard the quote, and it's where I first heard of it. And it's a philosophy that I've been trying to adhere to ever since. Now, I wanted to do a whole episode on this quote because if we want better lives, we do have to make hard choices and almost daily. So what Jerzy's trying to say is that we're always faced with options, small or big ones. We can either go down the easy road, like eating lots of junk food, scrolling all day, procrastinating, and being comfortable in the short term, but that could lead us to being unhealthy and not hitting our goals. However, we can choose to go down the hard road, like not eating too much fast food, exercising regularly, working on our projects. Although it's more difficult and uncomfortable in the short term, it would lead us to more healthier and fulfilled lives in the long run. The reason why it's hard is because it's a form of delayed gratification. And in this fast-paced world of everything being instant and on demand, it will be even harder to do. Now, this can also apply to our financial independence journey as well. So for instance, we can choose the easier options of not tracking our expenses, not trying to save, buying things we don't really need, buying more things for convenience sake, spending way more on our wants than our needs. But will it take us closer to our freedom or further from it? Of course, I'm not saying you have to be like a hermit and live a boring life. You can make the occasional splurge here and there, and it's absolutely up to you how you wish to spend your money. But just make sure overall you're still on track to the goals that lead to your freedom. Now, I found that this quote can apply to those big life decisions as well as the small ones. So some of those big decisions might be, maybe it's choosing to quit something like a bad habit or something else not serving you, maybe relocating to a new area, maybe it's choosing what degree to take, or maybe it's choosing a new job or choosing to leave a job. So sometimes we're faced with these big life-altering decisions. We know the right answer, but we also know that the right answer is the hard road. But 9 times out of 10, the right answer, although difficult, ultimately leads us to the right path later on. I've been faced with lots of big decisions before. So for example, when I went on my long-term sabbaticals, both were extremely hard decisions. The easier choice would be to just keep working and do my normal routine. The harder choice would be not earning an income, depleting my savings, exploring unknown places. But I knew in the long term the benefits would be tenfold. With those small decisions, For me, they might have been difficult in the beginning, but those decisions that used to be hard are now just on autopilot and much easier to do. So for example, my regular exercise routine, waking up early, my evening gratitude journaling, deleting Netflix and not watching too many TV shows. So if you do those harder things enough, eventually they just become easier to do. So harder to begin with, but they just become part of your usual routine. So anyway, how can this help you? Well, my suggestion is to look at your past week and identify what easy decisions have you made and acted on that you think could have been different. For example, was there a project you procrastinated doing, not sleeping at a certain time, watching too much K-drama, and things like that? For me, it's always something like I had too many potato chips or crisps, as we say in UK, or I had too many carbs, or I had one too many ice creams. So anyway, once you've identified the easy choices we made last week, starting next week, what are those harder choices we need to make, and then just try to do them. And just remember, they don't have to be super hard choices like going gym 3 hours every day. They could just be smaller and slightly harder choices, but over time, you'll ramp them up. I remember in the book Atomic Habits, the author mentioned a lady who wanted to identify herself as a healthy person. So throughout her day, she'd always ask herself, would a healthy person do this? So for example, if she was faced with an unhealthy snack, she'd ask herself, would a healthy person eat this? And it really helped her. Of course, there will be times when you want to go with the easy choice. Sometimes that could be for small things like choosing to stay in bed, eating that cookie. But as long as there are only a few here and there and aren't more than the hard choices, then I think that's all good. If you're faced with those big decisions and you go for the easy choice, when you know in your gut it's the wrong choice, then that could take you much further away from your goal. But hey, we live and we learn, right? So as a principle, as much as possible, always go with the hard choice. Now, I also read a blog article that put a slight twist on the quote, which I thought was useful to share as well. It's from the Offbeat blog. Their thinking is that working hard on its own is not enough. You need purpose, strategy, and direction to go with it. Which I totally agree with, by the way, but there's only so many words you can put in a catchy quote. Anyway, they suggested an alternative variation to the hard choices quote, which was this: stupid choices, bad life; smart choices, good life. Which I think works just as well, but you can choose whichever one works best for you, as long as you understand the principle. So to wrap this up, here's a paragraph written by Jerzy himself. Exercising for entertainment and eating for pleasure are easy choices that don't make you better over time. Easy choices are familiar and comforting, but there's no growth or improvement. So essentially, Jerzy advises us to get used to being uncomfortable. We procrastinate on things because it's so much easier to be comfortable. Let's choose the hard choice. Let's start small and then create habits out of them so it becomes easier. If you think this episode would help a friend, please don't hesitate to share it with them. The show notes can be found at freedombeforefire.substack.com. If you have a question or want to connect, feel free to send me an email at freedombeforefire@proton.me. That's freedombeforefire@proton.me. If you found this show useful and want to be notified of future episodes, you can follow us on Spotify or Apple via the show's main page or on whatever app you're using right now. And lastly, if you've just learned one good thing that will help you in your journey and you want to help us out here, please do leave a 5-star rating on your podcast player app. If you're using Apple Podcasts, you can even leave a nice review by scrolling to the bottom of the podcast page. That would help us out loads. Alright, so that's the little gem I wanted to share today. If you have any questions or a topic request, feel free to email me at freedombeforefire@proton.me. Have an awesome week, and as always, practice gratitude, live life by your design, and do things that make you smile. You got this.